So let's get into it. It's a Friday, and of course, on the back of the plan of execution as laid forth by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, Vice President, flag bearer of the MPP. We're cutting incisively into it with the experts. I've shared with you my blunt thoughts, but what do our academics and others, those in industry, think? Dr. Yiadom is Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Accounting and Finance at the University for Professional Studies, Accra. We also have Dr. Christopher Ampadu. He's a political analyst. Both of them join the conversation. Let me first say a good morning to Dr. Ampadu, who is joining us virtually. Dr. Ampadu, a very good morning to you. Can you hear me, Doc?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. We also have Dr. Yiadom in the studio. He is Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Accounting and Finance, UPSA. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Sometimes you join us virtually, sometimes you come into the studio.
Yes.
We're grateful. Since you are in the studio, you have every opportunity. Let me go first to Dr. Ampadu to find out what was your fundamental appreciation of this plan of execution as laid bare by the Vice President. How captivating was it for you? Did you get what you were expecting, Doc? Dr. Ampadu, that's for you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity. It was just wonderful. In fact, some of us have been waiting for the Vice President, since he was elected as the flag bearer, to come out with his policies, opinions, and what he intends to do when given the mandate. I was so excited that he really came out to put across all his intentions and what his policies would be and what he would want to achieve when given the opportunity to be the president of the nation. I seriously appreciate all that he said, and I believe that he means so well for the nation. He, as a person, I think he means so well for the nation, and for all that he has said, he will be able to do. But then, it's one thing talking about it, and it's one thing executing it when you are in power, especially when you cannot do everything and you have to delegate and assign duties to people to work on your behalf. So these are very powerful things he has said, and I think he intends so well for the nation. But I still think I have a lot of doubts, saying politicians, you have known them over the years, they will say things so beautiful like this. And yet when it comes to power, it's another thing altogether. So for now, that's what I can say, that all the outline of policies, his intentions, and all of that, they are just wonderful. And this is what these are the things the nation needs to move forward in terms of progress, in terms of development. But then, as a social scientist, you are working with people, the people. That is, for me, my fear that he intends so well, but he's not going to work alone. The people who are pushing him on, the people who have surrounded him, are people who have tasted power, are people who have worked with this system for some time. We know them. And so, if he intends so well, are these people going to help him to achieve what he has outlined for the nation? We just have to pray for him. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ampadu, for your initial remarks. Dr. Yiadom, were you as excited as Dr. Ampadu, having listened to everything the Vice President had to say?
Thank you for the opportunity once again. And I should say that it is a challenging moment, for our country, and especially for the Vice President to be able to state your position whilst you're in government, which in a way depart from what the current administration is doing. I mean, but if we listen to him carefully, it tells us that the vice president wants to chart a new course. We've had a couple of discussions about this administration in previous year and even at the start of the year, and I've stated my position clear, especially in terms of certain taxes that the government has introduced. But to hear the vice president telling us that this is how we are doing things currently, but this is the way that I want to go, it shows that the vice president is bold enough to tell us his position in spite of all the things that is going on. And one thing that resonates with me is the fact that he talked about digitalization. You see, if we look at the Ghanaian economy, it has been built on the premises of what I call the brick and mortar economy. What it means is that every little shock will have a great impact on the Ghanaian economy. So for the vice president to be able to come out with a policy or with his vision that this is where he wants to go by changing the structure of the Ghanaian economy, I think I will recommend him, or I will commend him for that bold stance. And I think it is clear if you look at his one of the things that he talked about is he's making bold decisions for the future. Mm-hmm. And I think leadership is about being bold and stating your position. And the vice president has been criticized, over the years. But to be able to come out and tell us exactly what you are going to do, you see, we'll go into it whether he will be able to do the things that he promised or he stated in his speech. But taking the speech on the face value and the things that he intends to do, I think that he has a vision for the country and that he wants to redefine the foundation and the structure of the Ghanaian economy.
I like the fact that you talk about on face value. The legal students will say, prima facie, on face value, it appears fantastic. But I'd like to quickly get this point out of the way, especially with Dr. Ampadu and you. I'd like to start with you. He says, as vice president, I was a driver's mate, but if you vote for me, I will take the driver's seat. Which brings to mind then, how relevant is the role of a vice president? Throughout this Fourth Republic, we've said they have been in charge of the economic management team, whether they were economists or not. Thankfully now we have an economist who has been at the helm of affairs. In many ways, he's now tried to detach himself from what decisions may have come to bear. I've heard people talk about the fact that, but being head of the economic management team did not necessarily mean that he was running the economy. There's a finance minister. There's a case to be had there. But at the same time, we've also been told on several occasions, he's the one in whom God has reposed all the economic knowledge and everything in between. So you ask yourself, what then really is the relevance of the vice presidency in this instance? What would be your response to that?
Great. So as the head of the economic management, we are supposed to advise. And you and I know that advice is not an imposition. That you can advise somebody, but it's up to the person whether to take or not to take. But we cannot say that the vice president, from his speech that I listened to, is detaching himself from the present administration. But one of the things that he mentioned was that as the finance minister focused on the budget and the BOG focused on monetary policy, he was tasked to ensure the fundamentals of the economy is reshaped through digitalization. So in a way, unless we hear from the president to come and tell us that is not the work I gave him, and he is responsible for all the economic challenges. Do you honestly
expect that?
Sorry?
Do you honestly expect that?
Yeah, so we won't get there. For example, if we run an institution where there is a head, the head will obviously tell you that in spite of the many work that you are assigned to do, this is the one I want you to focus on. And I don't think that the vice president should go beyond or to deviate from the task that he has been assigned to do. If in the interest of the president, he thinks that looking at his economic acumen and the way he does things, he will be a perfect fit in my digitalization agenda. So let me place him there whilst he tried to also support the economic decisions. So he clearly specified that it is true that I am part of the economic management team and I'm the head of it. However, the advices that has been given, it is the president's prerogative right whether to take the advices or go the other way.
But if someone is the repository of all knowledge, like we're made to believe, the economic whiz kid, would you take his advice or not?
Well,
especially when the president himself had said on the campaign trail that he had handpicked his vice based on the economy, and that he was the one in whom he was well pleased, so to speak, to come and handle it. Dr. Bawumia himself had touted that, in the economy, and when things were rosy, that, they had done this and they had done that. So focusing on that, the metrics, economic management team, because those were the same metrics he held the likes of former Vice President Emisa Arthur to. How would you assess Dr. Bawumia in terms of heading the economic management team and where we find ourselves by way of the IMF, by way of our debt, by way of what we now have to go through now, even the threat of a 15% addition on VAT? I went somewhere yesterday and looked at my tax bill. I was surprised. The currency exchange and everything. How would you assess that?
Well, so we will look at this administration in two parts. We'll look at it from 2017 to 2020. Then we'll look from 2020 and where we stand now. If we look at the indicators, everything was pointing to the right direction. Now 2020 comes in. We have COVID. Then everything seems to take a nosedive. We can't say that we will not put all the blame on the COVID-19 or whatever Ukraine or whatever war it happened. But you see, countries respond to shocks differently. And how Ghana will respond to the shock of COVID-19 will not be the same way Benin or our neighboring countries will do, depending on your level of dependency. For example, over the years, our international reserve, that is our import cover, is about 3 months or 2.5 months over the years. And you shut down an economy, through COVID-19 for months. What it means is that literally you will not have certain domestic revenue to be able to keep the country going, So it is true that this government has overly relied on COVID-19, but we can't run away from the fact that the impact affected the country because we have not built that fundamentals for the economy to stand the test of time.
So are you saying inadvertently that the fundamentals are weak?
The fundamentals, and the president, the vice president has said even before he came to power that if the fundamentals are weak, the currency and the exchange rate will expose.
But you remember what he said after he was in power and the exchange rate? He said no, but it doesn't mean, he said it was warped logic. I played that this morning. If you suggest that just because the currency is whatever, flip-flopping, the fundamentals are weak. He went back on his own word.
So let me come in. Let me come in on that. You see, the fundamentals are weak in that we have not set the economy to be able to be self-sufficient. Self-sufficient, and I mentioned about the import cover. And this economy is import-driven. So what the fundamentals that I see the vice president doing by transforming the economy to become more digitalized, it will be robust in the fourth industrial era. So we can't run away from the fact that the fundamentals of Ghanaian economy since independence has been weak,
I see.
If we don't do anything differently from it, if any shock comes, it will be worse than what we experience. So it is true that although the president have touted him to be economic risk kid and all that, but the economic fundamentals of the country cannot be changed overnight, and it takes a systematic step. And it should be a continuous government, like what is being done now, especially in terms of registration, NIA cards and all that. It should have been done, I think, about since 2000 when for came.
And indeed, this whole drive about national identification started way back. If we're talking about it, but let me just, a quick one.
Yeah.
I don't know, because if you follow the Singaporean example, the Asian tigers, East Asian tigers, among others, and you look at their trajectory, there were clear signs of development and progress, whether you want to look at Malaysia, whether you want to look at whichever other one of these countries, right? In, let's say, close to 10 years. Now, this administration has had 8 years, and you can say same for the NDC, right? 8 years, almost 8 years. Wouldn't you see the writing on the wall? How long would it take before you started to see the real signs of palpable development. And here we are again in an electoral year, and we are getting another shuttle of promises coming through after 8 years. So we have a vicious cycle of 8 years with practically nothing done, and they now tell you, oh, now we are going to do this. 8 years, not enough?
Well,
to at least show signs, not enough?
Yes, 8 years is quite a time in the life of a country to show symptoms of growth. And if I, like I mentioned earlier, in 2017, if you take in the 2023 budget, they gave a trajectory of the various sectors of the economy in the direction they were pointing to. And you could see that almost the indicators were going right until 2020. You see, when you are studying economic trends and there's a sudden dip, you have to ask yourself, what happened? There's a certain dip or there's a certain upshoot of the trend. You should be able to interrogate yourself. So you could see that we mixed the target from 2020, 2021. But when we had our last discussion, I think at the beginning of this year, you could see that the indicators are beginning to pick up. Pick up means that we are almost overcoming the challenges that we found ourselves in the 2020-2021, because of the COVID-19. So with the 8 years, if we had a smooth run, and that is not to hold a brief that you shouldn't build an economy which cannot withstand shock, because you can't predict the future. So if we take the 8-year cycle, we could see that there's a dip, but gradually we are getting the things right. But my only worry is the fact that should we have IMF around for that long for us to begin to get some of these indicators correct? I mean, so I see that the fundamentals are being reset for a country to take off, But then if you ask me about the promises, then we have to look at how realistic are these promises, and that will be a different conversation.
All right, and we'll quickly get to that. Let me get to Dr. Ampadu now. So going back to the same point, the role of a vice president, and we're analyzing it because it appears from time to time we get there and we make it, from way back the days of Vice President Akka, who infamously, supposedly was assaulted and everything in between. But it appears to a large extent there's been some downplaying of the role of a vice president, even to the former vice president under the MPP. His name just, Aliu Mahama, right? And all of that. To Emisa, even before that, Atta Mills, Aliu Mahama, Emisa Arthur, and all the others. How relevant from the political standpoint is it? We have, in our constitution, pegged it that the vice president will be head of the economic management team, which John Mahama was when he was vice president, which Dr. Bawumia has been as vice president. How relevant is the role of VEP, and how relevant is that role per the dynamic of economic management? What's your take, Dr. Ampadu?
Thank you, Ben. I think when even Mahama was campaigning to be president, he said almost the same thing that Bawumia is saying, that being a vice president is just be like a figurehead. You assist, you support the president. You are not someone who does the real work in terms of taking the major decisions to move forward. So yes, we can go back to the Constitution and look critically at the role that the vice president is to play. But then you should understand that that role plays a second fiddle to the president. And in our context, we have presidents who are surrounded by very powerful people. Sometimes they even appear to be more powerful than even the president. And so, if you're a vice president in this situation, yes, you are the head of the economic management team, as the Constitution says. Yes, when you meet, you bring out all your thoughts, the ideas, things that can transform the economy and the nation for that matter. But then, the implementation has to do with the president and his close, sometimes not even cabinet, close associates. And that's where the problem is. So, look at your question. The presidency and the role of the vice president in our context, I think, is just like a figurehead you are there. If the president is out of the country, then you are recognized. Then you can even represent him. But then even that representation sometimes is not effective because he has assigned the very decisions he has taken as a management team leader, the very decisions he has taken, or the very things that we have discussed. Now, we are very powerful, what we call finance minister, and then we have advisors, very powerful advisors, presidential advisors on economy, on finance, and all of that. So yes, you are a vice president, but then here you are. You are just like a figurehead. So sometimes I appreciate it is not me alone who is saying this.
So when he says,
I've said it over and over, and I think that is what we are experiencing in our country.
Doc, quick one. So the figurehead bit that you use almost sounds like a ceremonial position like we would have in the British monarchy, where yes, the king or the queen would have to assent to certain things, but basically it's a ceremonial role you play. Is that what you're insinuating? And does that feed into the driver's mate and assistant headmaster rhetoric? Is it apt?
Well, in the Constitution, it does not appear as a figurehead or a ceremonial head. You are supposed to be very active and effective in what you are doing. But we have to come back to our system. Does it work in our situation? What Baudia is saying, these are serious political, economic, and social thoughts he's bringing across. And the way he's talking, and the way some of us know him, if he has the chance, the opportunity to implement them, I think it can be far better than what you are saying. But he was completely handicapped. All that he said concerning the fundamentals, all that he said concerning the currency, all that he said concerning the inflation, all these things have not come to play. Why? Because, yes, he is part of the government. But then, I think he didn't have the chance, the opportunity to really work effectively to make sure that what he said as an economist will come to play in the Bank of Ghana, in the economy of the nation, and all of that. So sometimes vice presidents can be excused for that. And that's why I'm saying that, sometimes it's good to give an opportunity. But you have seen it from Mahama. Whether he was able to do it, now that's another thing to talk about later. Whether Baumia will be able to do it is also another question we can discuss later. But for me, I have a lot of doubts that yes, he has the ideas, he has the heart to do it, but to bring it to reality in the political dispensation we find ourselves is another thing altogether.
All right, so the ideas may be there, but execution is where the devil is. It has always been where the devil is. It's not about the rhetoric, the talk. And it's not about trying, because we've been told time without number, try us, try me. And the results have been what we've seen. But I want us to take apart, I want us to start first with taxes and other components, even before we get into making national service no longer obligatory or mandatory, even before we talk about allowing for contracts to receive public scrutiny and all of that. Those are things that are convoluted in their own right. Let's talk about money, taxes, under an IMF program. I just shared in my blunt thoughts. So the 12 tax handles, revenue measures, that government was going to use to rake in about 9.5 billion Ghana cedis under the IMF program. We're looking at revising and expanding taxes on gambling revenue, which would yield 512.4 million Ghana cedis. Expanding the entities subject to communication service tax, another 512.4 million Ghana cedis. Increasing stamp duties, another 512.4 million Ghana cedis. Introducing a simplified mechanism for the modified taxation scheme for small taxpayers, 427 million Ghana cedis. I want to walk us through all of them. So now the fifth, removing selected VAT exemptions, 4.4 billion Ghana cedis. Introducing a 5% VAT rate on rental of commercial premises, 854 million Ghana cedis. Introducing a Commissioner General's authorized VAT invoice for income tax purposes, expected to yield another 512.4 million Ghana cedis. Introducing an emissions tax, which we now have, and a plastic and packaging tax, 597.8 million Ghana cedis. The final batch, implementing a second phase of EVAT and ongoing EVAT compliance measures combined, 341.6 million. Implementing a minimum chargeable income system, 170.8 million. Enhancing the implementation of the vehicle income tax, that is the VIT, sticker premium or mechanism, 85.4 million Ghana cedis. Implementing the World Customs Organization Safe Framework of Standards, Pillar 1, 427 million Ghana cedis. Now, you look at Dr. Bawumia and he's saying that he will take away the betting tax, the 10% and the other things in there. There will be no VAT on electricity if it is still on the books by 2025. He will take away the emissions tax. If you add those components, and I know you are no financial analyst, but I'll throw them to you first and find out what you think before I come into the studio. It means that when you take away the betting tax, 512.4 million Ghana cedis is gone. If you take away the VAT on electricity, if it's still on our books, 4.4 billion Ghana cedis is also gone, together with other selected VAT exemptions inclusive. And then if you take away the emissions tax, another 597.8 million Ghana cedis is gone. Add the total, you have 5.51 billion Ghana cedis. The question is, when the Vice President takes away these, especially with our history of robbing Peter to pay Paul, we take away from the left and we add from the right. How is he going to make this money? And do you believe that these tax reforms will actually take place? Dr. Ampadu.
Thank you. As you said, I'm not a financial analyst, but then, where does this tax proposal, where does it come from? From the IMF. Now, look at the money that they are taking from the IMF. The IMF policies are going to take not 1 year, more than a year or two. Now, as far as we take their money, there's no way you can remove these taxes and still get their money. It means that, you may talk like this the way you are saying it, but then the IMF has put in some injunctions for you to get the money. For me to continue to support you, these are the taxes that your people have to pay. And we do know that these taxes are taxes that the ordinary man cannot. We cannot, like how workers are rising up and people are really talking about it. That is why the Vice President said when he is giving the mandate, he will remove it. Now, it is going to be just easy to remove as we continue to depend on IMF. For me, that's a big question you have to answer. So it is easy political talk to say that when I come, I will take this off and remove these taxes and look at the quantum of money that will be lost if you remove it. But it is a condition for you to get support from IMF. And so if you are capable of growing the economy such that you have enough money to replace this component of taxes, then you're okay. But we don't know where the economy is now. It's a downshed that cannot stop itself. Where do you get this money? And so when you're talking about removing the taxes, then you have to create avenues to make sure that the economy grows and gets money to support the other areas where these taxes will support. And the big question we here will ask you, how are you going to do it, or where are you going to get that business from? So for me, I think these are some of the same positions we talk about, because they know currently taxes Ghanaians have risen against taxation. So as far as people say we are not ready, opposition party says we are not ready to support any tax, and everyone says we are not ready, then for you to get your vote, oh, when I come, I'll remove that and I'll remove that, And it is said that now, because the taxes are not just being levied on people, it's a condition that you need to implement if you are to get IMF money. And IMF money drags on through 2024 to 2025, when maybe if you come, you'll be in power and you'll be enjoying that money. So how do you enjoy that and still remove these taxes? These are questions I think we should be asking.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on those. Let me come to Doc in the studio. We have guidelines from the IMF, and to all intents and purposes, I have already shared what I have, deduced from the 0.2% we were supposed to raise of our revenue per the IMF. We decided to slap it on the people with a VAT. Now, it is clear that to meet the IMF regulations, and there's been talk from the IMF recently cautioning Ghana that, listen, you have to go down a certain road to meet our regulations so you can keep on getting funding and all of that. So how then, with all these stipulations, are we going to raise those sums of money if the Vice President takes away the taxes?
Thank you. Before I answer your question, I want to quickly say that the role of the Vice President, as in the head of the economic management team, I've been struggling to find out whether it is really in the Constitution, and I'll be very happy to have it. I see that it's tradition that has created it, that we try to put the Vice President to be the head of the economic management team. So I think we have to recheck and find it out. But I'll be happy to see the constitutional provision that put the Vice President as the one who is solely responsible.
I don't believe it's necessarily
so that is the
stipulated in the Constitution, but it's been throughout the Fourth Republic. Exactly. It's been one of those norms that we've had.
That's what
and we've stuck to it and touted it.
Yes, so if we have stuck to it, and this president says, or from the speech we heard, says that we should, I want you to concentrate on digitalization. I mean, I think it is clear that the role that has been assigned to the person. But having said that, let me go on to
But I think before you also go on, we must stipulate, just to clarify, because especially in the Fourth Republic, the economy has been crucial to any conversation from the early 90s till now, because we've had IMF programs back to back. You cannot also take away from the fact that the same Vice President who was running mate and before he came was put forward to Ghanaians as the one who worked on the economy. The president specifically said that he brought him in because of that. The economy. Yes. So I guess that is where Ghanaians will come in and assess him. That's the point. But go ahead.
So when you come to the IMF program, you see, anytime you go for an IMF program, there's something you call a debt covenant. There's a restrictive clause that tries to bind the creditor from undertaking certain activities. And the interest of the IMF is whether you'll be able to rake in enough revenue to be able to offload your debts, to make you a bit sustainable. So the focus of IMF is your ability to bring in revenue. So the choice as to where you want to rake the revenue is left to you. So if you see that charging more taxes is a way of getting revenue, to be able to make you self-sufficient, then you have taken that line, and IMF will also make proposals based on the structure of your economy. You see, in terms of taxes, there are two ways we can look at it. You can either go vertical or horizontal. Vertical means that continuously increase the tax of the existing tax people. Like you mentioned that you go and buy just small rice from a restaurant, and the receipt given is so long as if it's an exam script. So it means that we have gone the way of vertical. But if you look at the speech delivered, the Vice President had the intention of broadening the base. And it almost appeared that we've talked about the NIA for so long, and the fact that a lot of the issuing of cards, and he mentioned that they have issued about 17 million cards. You see, you can't tax people you cannot find. You can only tax people you can identify. So the NIA cards is a way of broadening the tax base. I listened to one gentleman who wants to run for president, and they were questioning him about the young man, Kwame Bediako. They were questioning him about the source of funding. And he gave a very crucial answer that in elsewhere, nobody will question him about his source of income because the system has been built to track his source of income. We don't have that structure, so it becomes difficult in taxing people. So we talk about government should broaden the tax base. Government should broaden the tax base. How can that be done when the people cannot be identified? So by will
but whose work is it to identify the people?
Exactly. And that is the role of the government. And taking the initiative to broaden identification of people is a starting point of broadening the tax base. So from the speech and my understanding of what was read by the vice president, the intention is to broaden the tax base so that we don't go vertical, but rather we go horizontal. And in the end, if all this 5.51 billion is even not coming from those three taxes that we initially alluded to or wanted to raise in money, when you go horizontal, you're able to raise the money and meet the same purpose. So I don't think it's much of a concern in abolishing those taxes. And if you remember, I've been very critical about these taxes. And I've said time and again in your studios that if you promise us as a vice president that you move us from taxation to production, and now we are paying more taxes than what you told us, then it means that you will probably lie to us. So I am very confident in his approach in coming forward to tell us that this is the way I want to take the country by abolishing this tax, so that my word that I gave you some years ago will be fulfilled, that I'll be able to move this country from taxation to production.
So he said he would move us from taxation to production. That has not been achieved. We have more taxes now than we had then. But you believe that he'll be able to take off these taxes. Then my question to you, how do we claw back the revenue, the 5.9 billion? How do we get it back? Because this fairy tale of broadening the tax base, how long have we spoken about that? For about 2 decades plus, right?
Yeah.
So is the vice president going to wave a magic wand and make it happen all of a sudden when we know the cobblestones and the hobbling of the GRA and every other problem it faces? So you say we should move from vertical and go horizontal.
Yeah.
Going horizontal is not just by word of mouth. It is by action. Have we put in place the right measures to execute this horizontality or horizontalness within the shortest possible time? That's a question I'll put to you.
So we have always had a short-term measure, and as a country, I think because of our political cycle, it tends to make government focus on short-term measure. But going horizontal means that the government should put structures. And I've said time and again that we've not had a time that about 17 million Ghanaians can be identified. We've not had a time that properties could be easily identified.
You're talking of property rates and the rest.
Yes, that properties have been registered, and they've been captured. Now, the question is, when are we going to realize, as you're asking, that how long is it going to take us to realize? It is in that case we will need somebody who can implement the structures that have been put in place. I mean, you can put
the vice president has been, if for nothing at all, he's been vice president for 7 years now. He knew this. He's always known this. In fact, it's not new. It's something that has been in the system. It's not been implemented, but somehow now it will be implemented.
Yeah, but you started by saying that there's a driver's mate and there's a driver. So obviously,
no, he says that I never knew the vice president could be. I never knew there was a driver's mate, but he says there's a driver's mate. So do you get my logic?
I get your logic, and we should all be concerned about it. But how soon are we going to rake in the needed revenue? But for now, we can say that we have not been able to implement. But the logic of it is that if a lot of people can be identified, and you can find it from anywhere, especially advanced countries that have a very high tax compliance rate like Estonia, it starts from identification. If the people can be identified, their incomes can be identified, and they are on a certain financial stream or a certain, they can be captured in the financial system, then you can be able to identify them and tax them. But as to when, how soon will it be, it is a matter of implementation. So probably we have to give him a chance to be able to let us know whether now you're in the driver's seat. So let's see the things that you said, whether you're able to achieve it or not.
We ought to try him to find out whether he can
whether he will be able to
execute. And so you've still not given me a clear roadmap. Is it this horizontal pattern that will earn us the 5.9 billion? How do we rake in the 5.9 billion we are writing off to meet IMF agreements? I want a concrete answer on that.
Okay, so I have said.
And I'll be coming to you, Dr. Ampadu, shortly. I just wanted to clear this
okay.
point. Mm-hmm.
Now, the 5.5 million that we will be losing, we've not lost it yet. How do we get in?
You're looking at 5.9 billion Ghana cedis.
Yes, that we are losing. Mm-hmm. You see, the same way we implemented the what do we call it? The electronic transaction taxes, and it didn't rake in the revenue. You know, that it needs to be cut down to find out if we can rope in more people. It's the same way that I'm saying that if we decide to go horizontal, I mean, are we going to equip the general enough?
And let me just clarify so our viewers, maybe they can understand. If you're going vertical, you're focusing on the same pool of people, the same category. But if you're going horizontal, you are broadening the tax base, bringing in that woman who sells here at Makola, the person who does this private thing and doesn't even feed into the tax system. That's what you mean. I just wanted to explain so that people understand. Right, go ahead.
You see in Ghana, the few people who pay taxes are those that have always been burdened. I mean, so if the person in Abosokan who makes probably more money than the teacher in a classroom, I mean, is not paying taxes because we cannot actually identify the person's income and where the person is. And now we can identify the person. Then you should be able to cover. I can't give you in terms of maybe if we increase it by this margin, this is how much we are going to rake in. But what I know from practice is that if you increase the tax base, you will be able to cushion the possible shortfall in your revenue when you cut down the rate of taxes.
Yeah. Okay, let me come to Dr. Ampadu on this, and there are other topical matters that came up, including making national service optional. I had my own take on that. I have shared it, but I want to hear from you. Making national service voluntary. Then he says, since you are in academia, I want to run these two by you very quickly. Then he says he will review the free senior high school policy. We've spoken about a review for a long time, and we've always been rebuffed. The recent one was by the education minister, who said we didn't need a review, we needed improvement. And some wondered, improvement versus review, what's the real difference? What do you make of these two promises and actualizing them? And let me just make this clear. What is your stance on making national service optional?
Well, thank you so much. National service, as you know, I think it becomes so important for people to be patriotic as Ghanaians. All along, there are people who need to show that we love Mother Ghana. And to love Mother Ghana means that you should be given opportunity to serve in one way or the other. And to do that as a young person who has just graduated, I think, if people are given that chance to serve the nation for 1 year before they really go back to normal life, that should be very good. These are my thoughts. We are a people whereby people are not so patriotic. They only think of themselves. People are so selfish and so egoistic. But we have one nation to build. And national service, as the name implies, is a service to the nation. And I think removing it and making it, not making it mandatory, somehow, I don't think it's the best. But let's see how it goes also. But I think I did national service. It was a good thing of seriously what civil service even is. Because as a national service, all that I did was private work, private job, that is working in a private company. And so it gave me an opportunity to know my nation, to serve. And so, well, somehow, for some political gain, people will say it's not useful, but I think it's so relevant. And
what you say people will say, I want your take. What do you think? You've been through the mill. I did national service. You likely obviously did national service. What do you make of it, and how much does it contribute to what we do? Now, you know that countries like South Korea even have military service. Other countries in the West are even bringing on different forms of national service to whip up patriotism, nationalism, whatever you want to call it. He has stated his basis for wanting to make it optional. What do you think?
Well, I personally think making it compulsory will help the youth. Even though you see the intent of national service, I know now people don't, we have removed that real intention. Now people want jobs. They want something to do because they are mostly unemployed after graduation. So national service has come to be a source of employment for some people. For if not, they will just be staying at home doing nothing. So, you know, the reason for national service, I think, have been reduced to job creation, employment, having something to do after graduation, which I think is not the best reason why we should do national service. When we did national service, we did it as a service because it was done in the public service. And it was an experience that I think I enjoyed because it gave me an opportunity to work with civil servants, to know their thoughts, their way of serving the nation. And for me, it was very beneficial. But the reason why we do national service now, I think, has changed. And that's why maybe he thinks that there's no more reason. Don't make it mandatory. If people have jobs to do or some employment, why do you put them in national service to spend time on all of that? Well, that's maybe another reason. But then, my thought then is if we can keep the original intention, reason for national service, I think it's needful to instill some patriotism in our young people.
Let's now look at free SHS and the review of same. And what do you make of it? There has been a lot of talk about reviewing it in the past. Different forces, including the education minister, have said, no, we don't need a review, and a review is akin to this or that. But now the vice president is saying he will work at exactly that. What do you make of it?
Well, that's interesting because anytime, especially the opposition talks about review, is giving different interpretations. And people talk about cancellation, people talk about removing subsidy and all of that. So if now the vice president himself is saying it's to be reviewed, then I think, just as the public says, right, we think there is a need for that review because the way it was introduced, with all the free that we see, it has contributed to all the challenges that we have in national affairs. And so I think we need to take a second look at it. Yes, the government has a role to play. Parents have a role to play. Schools have a role to play. PTA have a role to play. You see, nations are built together. But in Africa, when we talk of things that are free and free, people are excited because they think it should be free. And that's the reason for our poverty and our hopelessness. But then, if people become responsible and think, yes, we need to contribute, we need to be part of what is happening, we all need to work towards something that will bring total progress. I think that leads to sustainability and improvement and progress. And when that's not done, then we have this problem that we're encountering now. So I think review is so important, and that should be done objectively. And holistic outlook has to be given to the whole process, and then we have to examine what role everyone, including parents and the government and PTA, all stakeholders, the role that to play in order to make it needful. So that's my thought there.
All right. Do hold for me. We'll be wrapping shortly. What is your take on same? So national service, free SHS, improvement review. What do you make of it?
Okay, so national service from its onset is supposed to be a service to the nation. like my co-panelist mentioned, that it's supposed to be your contribution to nation building. So originally it is still mandatory. But what I see, I did national service. And I remember I have lived all my life in southern part and I had to do my national service in Boko. It was an interesting time, to be there. It opened your eyes to see the bigger picture. But I think that an economy evolves, a country evolves over time. And I see the requirement when you're applying for a job that you should have completed your national service. So now the vice president is saying that if somebody can get a job, why should you tie him to the national service? When you are working in the company, it's also a service to the country. Because whatever you are doing, you could have been posted there in the name of national service. And now you have a company which want to recruit you. But because you've not done your national service, you can't get a direct employment. So if we make it optional and not mandatory, I think that it will achieve the same purpose if the person can get a job. If you get a job, it's training. National service also train you for the job. And now you have the job, you are learning.
So that answers the training question that some have raised, that national service gives them, because some of these people come straight from the tertiary institutions, no work experience, nothing. And I don't want to say clueless, but they lack a lot that you cannot directly feed into the work system. You feel going directly is still the way to go. Because
I asked myself, when I went to do my national service, what did I learn? And how different from what I'm doing today?
Do you feel you learned nothing from your national service?
No, I'm saying that what I did, I went there, I was teaching. And it is the same teaching that I'm doing. So if I've gotten somebody to employ me to teach, it would have been a continuous development.
Practically the same thing.
Practically the same thing. And almost every company, even if I've done your national service, you come, they will reorient you because there's a way they do things. You go through training, to be able to abreast yourself with how things are done. So national service is supposed to give a skill, it's supposed to give you training, it's supposed to prepare you for the job market. Now, if you get a direct job, will it give you a skill? Yes. Will it give you training? Yes. Will it be able to prepare you to do what you want to achieve? I think that it is the same route, but from different directions, and we'll be able to achieve the same purpose. Probably the name mandatory to voluntary is what has changed, but it doesn't change the end product.
All right. So final thoughts. I'd like you to share final thoughts, including amending certain portions of the 1992 Constitution and publishing contracts. I found that to be interesting. So there's been a lot of talk about corruption and everything in between. He says now contracts will be published for public scrutiny. We also know that this administration has, considering its reprisal of the erstwhile administration for sole-sourced contracts, a plethora of sole-sourced contracts, which we can allude to, which we can point to. How do you react to these points when it comes to publishing contracts and our current state of corruption, vis-a-vis even our assets declaration regime? And I've always spoken about assets and hidden liabilities where people could even be corrupt by feeding and you wouldn't know. I'll start with you and then go to Dr. Mpedu, and it's a wrap.
I don't know whether you wanted him to touch on free SHS, so I should go straight to this one. Free SHS,
I thought you were... Okay, but you can go ahead.
Yes, I think the free SHS should have been reviewed after the first term of this government.
So after the first 4 years?
I think it should have been reviewed. You can't be doing something without reviewing it. Even in our workplaces, at every year you are doing evaluation and certain amendments and things are implemented. So review is a right call.
Okay.
Then going on to your substantive question on contract and corruption and all that.
If you can, feed everything into 2 minutes.
Into 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Okay, so number one, the office of the OSP, Attorney General, and all the institutions put in place, I think it's a reactive measure to correcting corruption.
Reactive?
It's a reactive. However, putting institutions, like trying to remove the human element, is a proactive way of fighting corruption. Why do you always want the building to catch fire and you call the ambulance to come when you could have put your house in order to prevent your house catching fire? We have built an economy which is dependent on trust, but the people cannot be trusted. So digitalization is a way of fighting corruption, to be able to remove and minimize human interface. That is why I say that the speech given by the Vice President is charting a new course and repositioning Ghana towards the fight against corruption.
How about corruption in public leadership, technocrats, politicians?
Yes, yes.
Is it going to fight it too?
You see, when a politician or the technocrat want to be corrupt, it is through the civil servant that they work with. I mean, usually we see the corruption up there, but there's more corruption down there that we do not see. And integrating into digitization is a way of restricting and minimizing the extent to which a civil servant or technocrat within the space are able to influence the system. I'm not saying that digitalization will solve our problems, but I'm saying that it is a right call to be able to remove the human element, that we cannot entirely depend on trust, and we are hoping that public officials will hold the country in trust and be able to avoid the agency cost.
So for the sake of time, publishing the contracts, what do you think this will do? That is, if it even happens.
Yes. So publishing contracts will let us know who is doing what and how was it awarded. I mean, it also serves on a check on the executive, that you keep awarding contract to this one person. What is the relationship between that company and you? So I think that it is a way of enlightening and opening up people's mind to follow how contracts are awarded and how we can be able to keep track, on those that are awarded. And it will also help in the RTI, the right to information, and it will help us to be able to derive and ask important questions. But then, you see, before I conclude, Nokia CEO says something. When they were selling to Microsoft, he said, we did nothing, but somehow we lost.
Okay.
Nokia went to bed too early, and they didn't see that the world was changing. Since COVID-19, our country or the world has gone about 20 years ahead. If we do not prepare for our future by digitalizing our economy, we'll be left behind.
All right, thank you. Dr. Ampadu, quick thoughts.
Yes, I totally agree with you. That digitalization is the way to move. We are in a nation where corruption is so endemic that for everything people do, they want to take money. And so removing that idea of money, monetary system, and putting it into a digital system, I think, is the best way to go. And for the vice president who is hammering on that, I think that is one of the most important steps a nation like Ghana needs to take, because the biggest problem we are always confronted with is corruption. This is the way to go to take away this big handicap of national growth, of national prosperity. Then I think some of us should give him all the support to make sure that it happens, so that the biggest problem we have in Ghana can be removed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ampadu. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining the conversation. Dr. Eric Yiadom is Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Accounting and Finance at the UPSA, and Dr. Christopher Ampadu is a political analyst. That's the first batch of our conversations, but still to come, there's a whole lot more, because guess what? If you could use your technique to critique government or do other things that lighten the moods of people, would you use it? That's exactly what Louis Appiah has been doing with his Tales of Nazir series. We'll bring you that later on the show. But for now, let's settle for EduProof and how you can benefit from their upcoming events. Stay with us. Sweetie Abochi up next on The AM Show.